Well, hi there. So I've been having a lot of fun these days because I'm spinning up yarn or fiber into yarn and making it be a bulky single because I've always loved bulky rovings. I like the way that they just show stitches so well and I like the look of them. So I've been trying to get really good at doing that. And so people have asked me how I was doing that. They saw some of the ones I did. So this is a chunky single that I did, and there's the end of it, and we can just go in and look at some of these there, and you can just see what they're like. They're nice, they're stable. Okay, because I set them after, so they're really easy. Now I was doing it with my spindle, which just a second, I'll get my spindle. Okay, I was doing it with my spindle here, but if you have some kind of a spinning machine, it will look just as nice. And of course, the yarn can be used for anything. I loom knit, but you can use it for crochet, knitting, whatever. So here's one thing that I do for a technique to get a nice, even bulky. Now I have some yarn here, and this is a Falkland wool. And it was just a little bit too bright for me for what I wanted to do. So I decided that I was going to blend it with this one that I thought was a little bit too dull. It's pretty much all this kind of a rust color. And that would tone the one down. Now, it would take a long time in comparison to the technique I'm going to use if I used a blending board and did all the pieces and blended them up and then made a row leg and went to all that. And especially with bulkies, unless you have a really soft yarn like Corriedale, it's a little harder to get a bulky. They always want to get too thin, and it's harder to get them even. So what I'm going to do is make strips. So I'll take this one first, and when you're making strips, it's usually better to go down the middle in the beginning, and you just tear it open. Okay, now depending how thick you want your bulky, and I want a thinner bulky with this yarn. So what I'm going to do is do it in half again. I'm just going to start down here because as it gets thinner, it's a little harder to get it to be even as you go down. I'm just going to tear it all the way down again. Okay, and then I'm going to go again and do it one more time. And this little red piece, there we go, bring it down, and there we go. Now I got this piece and I got a bunch of others. Now this piece is pretty even. You're not going to have to draft it or do anything unless you want to. If you've torn it a bit unevenly, you're going to get a bit of a thick or a thin yarn. And if you have one that's thicker than the others, you can draft it a little bit, but this is perfect. I check it by going like this, and it's going to be a fairly fine yarn for the kind of bulky I want, so I know that I can actually put another one on it. And so then I tear another one off this. And this is it's a yak, merino, alpaca, and silk. So that's what this one is. And it's very, very soft yarn. Falkland's pretty nice and soft for a pure wool as well. So I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to go down the middle. And then I'm going to go down the middle again. And then This will just work like this, but I'll show you something. Sometimes if you're doing two different ones like this, one strip will be thicker than the other. This one's about the same, but let's say it was thicker. Well, in that case, you could put a thicker one with a thinner one, whichever they were, as you decided which two that you were going to put together. Now this one is just a tiny bit uneven, so I'm just going to do a tiny bit of drafting, not small. Let's draft a little bit right here. And these drafts so easy when they're this thin. It's really, really easy to do. And then this all feels thin enough. Okay. And then all I do is put them together like this and spin them. That's all there is to it. And I lost my spindle again, so I'll go get that. Okay, I've got them. Whoop. Got it on the spindle here. Put it on my leader. And then I'm just going to twist it. And there we go. Yarn. Bulky yarn, just like that. I'll do a little bit more. Just want you to show you how nice and even it is. So there you go. A really nice even yarn. And then what I do is I felt the ends together. So I'm just going to get some ends to show you what I do. Okay, so I got two pieces of yarn here. So I'm going to have these little spindle pieces and I'm going to want to join them after. And so you just open up each side. I do this when I'm joining, when I'm loom knitting with wool anyway, or any natural fabric, because it felt so easy. And then you're going to have little points, and then I just put them together. Usually if I put the points on each side like this. And you just put it on your hand. Hold it. And then I'm going to dip my hand in water, if I can find where it is here without going off camera, and put water on it. Okay, so put water on it, and then you just rub, and it's the friction that felts them together. Okay, and so there it is. You got to join, and they're pretty much invisible, so I can felt it down a little bit smaller. And then there they are, pretty much invisible. And they're strong. So in case you didn't know how to do that felting, I thought I'd show you how to do the felting. So I'll come back. I'm going to spindle the yarn, spindle fiber into yarn, and then I'm going to set it. And how I set the singles is first I set them in quite warm water. Make sure they're soaked really good. And then I rinse them. Well, I don't even really rinse them. I soak them in really cold water, and that will shrink them back down. Like the warm water kind of opens them up. Cold water will shrink them back down and felt them slightly. And then when I hang them to dry, I don't usually flap them or thwack them like some people do, because I have smaller amounts because I'm spindling. So what I do is I just kind of open them up and pull on them a little bit to shock some of the twist out of them, and then I just hang them. And when they're dry, they're yarn, and I use them to do my loom knitting. So that's all there is to it, but I will show you what they look like when they're done. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so my yarn is done and set, and here's what it looks like. And you can see the colors here in the ball that I rolled. And it's really pretty. I'm glad I did this. And it's just the size bulky I want. You can see how nice and even it is. Now, the other thing I guess I should go through is how I set it to get it like this. And I did want to show you it's nice and set. See, it doesn't really curl on itself. Or very little anyway. So it is pretty nice. You can just keep knitting and it's not going to be curling all over upon itself and whatever. And if you have a little too much curl after you're done, you can just reset it. So you just take some of the spin off and then you'd put it back in the water baths again. So how I do this is, what I do is I get some fairly warm water towards hot, not so hot it burns my hands, but as hot as I can stand. And I put the yarn in there, and I do it in small batches because I'm a spinner on a spindle, and I don't have a nitty naughty. I don't need it. I just like to do them as soon as they're done and hang them up. They dry faster and I can use them faster too. But any way that you want to do it, with a big container or a small container, I just use the warm water and I set it in there, and I don't leave it in there for a long time. I just make sure it's quite saturated. I push it down and make sure that the water's all through it. And when it's done, I squeeze it out and I get really cold water right away, and then I put it in the really cold water, and that felts it quite nice, and I make sure that it sits there in the cold water. I can see it felting. I can see it shrinking down, and then I just squeeze it and I squeeze it on a towel to get more water out of it, and then I just hang it up. I just hang them on coat hangers. I hang them off every doorknob in the house. But anyway, this is what you get. And so if I was going to knit up something, you can see I'm just going to have a nice bulky yarn, and it looks just like the ones in the store if you buy a nice bulky. And the benefit is, if you have to buy a really nice roving bulky in a store that's natural fabrics, you are going to be paying a lot of money. It's a lot more economical to make it yourself, and you get nicer fibers and whatever you want. So there you go. I mean, I was paying so much to get nice roving bulkies, and now I'm just making my own. I'm just loving that. So I hope that's everything you need to know to do it. You can combine all kinds of things. Oh, and I could have made this a lot more bulky, or I could have made them thinner, the strips thinner. It's all how you make strips. I also could have made one of the colors really thick and the other color thin if I wanted to get more an even more subdued look. So it's up to you. And if you do like my technique and you like to do this, have fun. And okay, until next time, bye.